萬重浪，熱血熱星紅日光，胸襟百千丈，眼光萬里長，誓奮發自強，做好漢。
Let's do a quick recap. Stories where orphans try to avenge their fathers are unrealistic, and the monster who takes away their father often becomes the psychological replacement and represents their natural father's dark side. The Frankenstein monster orphans symbolize a fear of science advancing too quickly, as well as other anxieties, but in parental terms, it shows an underlying Oedipal resentment towards father figures. We also looked at animal movies and how they address orphans. A child befriends an animal like a whale or whatever, and suddenly their foster parents love them and they are accepted. This is illogical and unhelpful. And lastly, in media aimed towards girls, we find the orphan princess characters who think they are normal girls until they find out they are actually royalty, and also the daddy's little princess characters who have their mums missing for no good reason. Today I'm going to be looking at orphan characters who happen to be chosen ones, a story I'm sure you're familiar with, and I will analyze how, again, this does not accurately represent orphans or help them in any constructive way. Let's start by looking at Link's story in Ocarina of Time, one of the best games ever. Oh, this game's so fun. Bomb chew, sweet boots. Oh, sweet, I'm going fishing. Hey, that rock guy's doing dancing. Oh, I can't wait to go inside that giant fish monster. I'm just gonna give this guy the bottle and... Come on. Come on, come on. Hurry up. Holy crap, hurry up. Come on! We'll have to get back to this. Chosen one narratives in fantasy and science fiction tend to follow certain themes. The orphan hero is often from a small town or forest village or whatever, and although they are somewhat of an outcast, life seems somewhat ideal. However, because their destinies are so closely linked to fate as chosen ones, they are forced to leave their peaceful communities and embark on a quest in a wider and scarier world. These orphan heroes are easy to relate to because they're often from humble origins, like a small town. Many people can identify with that, and as they mature, so do we as we watch them grow. This growth, often represented in a rite of passage, can be seen in the acquisition of a new skill or a chosen artifact that will help them in their final mission. This mission is often to defeat an antagonist who is clearly evil, and when they achieve this, they become either the emperor or the king or High Lord Protector, something very important. Oh my god, hurry up! The chosen ones are in keeping with other orphan characters in recent literature in that they have very little to do with real orphans. And yet we see them again and again in books, in video games, in movies, in TV shows, fantasy and science fiction. These chosen ones keep appearing. Why is this? One of the reasons fantasy is an attractive genre is that it allows the viewer to escape the mundanity and unpleasantness of regular life. In the fantasy world, they can identify with a noble warrior, or a king, or a Disney princess, and this is something they're not capable of in their day-to-day lives. These characters are written as orphans so that the viewer or reader or whatever can fantasize that maybe their parents aren't real either, and that one day someone's going to wake them up and tell them that they're the heir to the throne. And this has the potential to cause enormous cultural problems. One of the reasons these fantasy stories are so dangerous is that they undermine important concepts for us, such as identity, government, and religion, and they replace them with ideas of medievalism. And this can be seen in some science fiction as well.
Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. He feared you might follow old Obi-Wan on some damn fool idealistic crusade like your father did. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the old Republic.
One of the tenets of medievalism was the idea of dualism, that things were either completely good or completely evil. and although there are some anti-hero exceptions, the protagonists are generally pretty easy to identify as good characters. The antagonists, however, are recognizably evil. It's very easy to tell this. Some of them are clearly satanic figures when you look at the horns on their heads. And because these villains are so dehumanized and clearly evil, violence against them is not only accepted, it is encouraged and glorified, to the extent that acts which were previously sins in their religion have become deeds of honor. An early precedent for Christian violence might have come with the idea of the harrowing of hell. When Christians tried to convert pagans, they had a hard time selling a Messiah who dies. So what they said is that after Jesus was crucified, he descended into hell and then basically kicked the crap out of Satan and all the bad guys and freed many of the lost souls. And this is reflected in Dante's Inferno, when you see that all the gates and rocks are smashed up. You can follow how this type of thinking led towards the ideology behind the Crusades, and it also was behind the concept of the divine right of kings, which basically held that a king was no longer just a clan chieftain, they were divinely appointed by God to be rulers.
Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. Be quiet!
The King Arthur orphan story tried to reconcile conflicting ideas of violence and Christianity with concepts such as the Round Table, a company of equals, but who gets to sit next to the king? And their noble quests and crusades seem Christian at first, but they kill people in order to achieve their goals, and they demonize their enemies. This is not Christian. The blending of Christianity and violence can be seen in many Chosen One orphan characters, such as Conan. Conan was a very popular character for all his machismo sword-wielding adventures, and there have been many clones of his story, but he is certainly not a Christian character.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. That is
So why is there a scene where Conan is nailed to a tree and crucified in a very similar way to Jesus? He is not Christian. There's even a scene where he bites the neck of a vulture who's trying to eat him. This movie was produced in the height of the Cold War, and there was a lot of toughening up male rhetoric in movies, like Terminator, Commando, Rocky, all the action movies of the 1980s. So Conan might be the byproduct of a militant Christianity, which we still see today. Many Chosen One orphans follow the revenge for the father motif, and again, they don't reflect real orphans. Often they're the son of great leaders and kings. Glorifying monarch figures is problematic because it undermines our concept of democracy. And of course, we identify with the one who becomes revered, so in many ways it's our fantasy to have control over many people. You see this in Pan's Labyrinth, where she escapes a fascist environment by fantasizing about becoming queen of a fairyland. But is feudalism any better than a dictatorship? I would argue that it's not. One last problem with these stories is that they advocate the idea of predestination. These characters are a safe bet because they're fated to become great leaders, and this takes away the responsibility of their own lives. Prophecy says that these characters will succeed in their mission, but what is prophecy and why can't we challenge it?
You can't be dead. You can't be. Because I love you.
He is the one.
Because these prophecies are unbreakable, they support a literal understanding of sacred texts and in turn support a fundamentalist view of the world. Many Asian Chosen One orphans are similar, but I'm not very familiar with this body of work, so I'm going to limit my comments. There seems to be a recurring orphan at the temple theme who doesn't have parents so he can learn how to be a great warrior, but it's not like Revenge for the Father. Some similarities include a clearly evil bad guy.
Many have said I do things that are not correct to do.
A prophecy.
When a good friend of mine told me there would be a chosen one.
There will be a chosen one.
And the Chosen One travels many miles to complete their quest.
How many miles? Would you say 10 million?
But any way you look at it, this isn't about real orphans. I hate this game!